Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Anitian's webinar, Injecting Wisdom into Cyber Threat Intelligence. I'm the speaker this morning for this webinar. My name is Jordan Wiseman. I've been doing IT and security stuff since the late 90s, with spent a good portion of that time in healthcare, dealing with the special concerns involved, not just traditional data security, but privacy, compliance, and sometimes even in enforcement. Real quick note about Anitian itself, for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with us or are new to our webinars. We have 5 primary practice areas that we do as a security consulting firm. We're pure consulting, so we don't sell product, which, honestly, I want to take a minute real quick and say that that's something I love about working here and the work that we do, is that I will give you my honest opinion about the security technology that you may or may not want to buy, my experiences with it, and what I know about it. I don't have to worry about interrupting sales or anything like that. So our 5 practice areas are vision path, which, as you can see, is about compliance, audit, and assessment work. This is the typical, you need someone to help you with ISO or SOC or PCI, that kind of stuff. We can do that. Ring 0 is our technical security testing practice. So these are the pen testers, the code reviewers, the application testers, the physical guys, and the social engineering guys, the folks that probe your defenses and see how good they really are. Risk Now is a practice we have about risk assessment and risk management within organizations. We do both the organization itself as well as help folks with third-party risk management. So getting a handle on the risks and the concerns that you have with the other folks that you do business with. We have a vCISO practice, which is cybersecurity leadership as a service. So if you don't have a staff with your own CISO or strategic security work, or maybe you just want a second set of eyes or additional opinions to talk about security architecture, planning, budgeting, all of that kind of stuff, we can help you there. And then our last practice is Sherlock, which is managed security operations. We do hunts for potential compromise. We do managed security detection and response, as well as some of the related intelligence work. So outline for this presentation, we're going to talk about what cyber threat intelligence is and is not. This isn't going to be an in-depth sort of here's all the nut and bolts, but it's going to help answer some questions that we get commonly from folks that maybe get sold certain solutions or products as threat intelligence, but maybe not have it fully. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the differences are, what that means. We're going to talk about how cyber threat intelligence can be used to complement traditional security teams and operations within an organization. It doesn't replace traditional security. You still need your IRT. You still need your incident, like your incident responders. You still need your security architects, administrators, and so on. But cyber threat intelligence can really help bolster their work, improve it, and provide support and assistance for those folks. Then we're going to talk about some tactical and strategic applications for cyber threat intelligence. So specific things you can use the processes and the outputs from to help your organization and your security folks in their operations. We're going to talk about a few issues that people run into trying to execute cyber threat intelligence. We'll talk a little bit about how to avoid them, and then we've got some additional thoughts and sort of some takeaways from the presentation that if you're so inclined, you could spend some more time looking into. All right, so let's get started. Let's start with what CTI is and is not. As I mentioned before, a lot of folks get intelligence in general has become a large buzzword in the last 5 years or so in the security space. Everybody's got intelligent solutions and tech and that kind of stuff. Well, cyber threat intelligence is not really that tech. It's not these machines that have specialized into one specific kind of thing. This is really good at mail security. This one's really good at behavior analysis and that kind of stuff. Maybe this one adapts to what it sees as the changing in baselines in your environment. All that's great, and those are very, very useful, but that's not really intelligence when we're talking about threat intelligence. Real quick as an aside, because I just noticed one, there's a typo on the slide where I'm missing a quote. So I want to tell you guys something. As we're going through the presentation, keep your eye out for that kind of stuff. If you miss any more, or if I miss any more typos, you guys find them for me, shoot me an email. You'll get my email address at the end of the presentation, and I'll send you a Starbucks card or a cup of coffee or something like that. Primarily because I care very much about the quality for that kind of stuff, and I deserve to know when I make mistakes. So anyway, getting back to it. One of the other big things that's happened in the last couple of years is this idea of threat feeds or intelligence feeds or something. They're sources of information, whether they're RSS-based or email-based or sometimes websites, and it's a collection of all of this data. Well, they tend to be, like fire hoses of information. These sources are going to fire stuff at you as fast as they can, give you as much data as they can, and it may or may not be useful. They have different audiences they're sending it to, so it might not be appropriate to your business. It may contain stuff you don't really care about. You're not going to know where they got it from or what the goals of their analysis or compiling of that data is. But on a more conceptual level, it's good to know that those feeds themselves also are not cyber threat intelligence, not as far as it would be concerned in the context of your business. They may be outputs from another organization's threat intelligence program, or they may be simply raw sources of data from their security monitoring systems or something else. And like I said, that's very useful, but it's not necessarily cyber threat intelligence itself. Similarly, carrying on the smart technology theme, automated defenses, which are another really emerging and well, kind of has for a while now, this idea that your security technology and apparatus can respond to changes in the environment, attacks, other bad actors, malicious users, all that kind of stuff on the fly to better protect your business. That's great. This tech is always advertised with words like smart, intelligent, and similar adjectives, but it doesn't necessarily itself isn't cyber threat intelligence. They're useful, they're great. If you have the time to tune them and get them to know your actual business, they can be incredibly valuable, but it's not really intelligence. Same thing with security analytics, another really valuable capability for an organization. Getting your logs, getting your security data, tracking those metrics, analyzing to determine what's going on in your environment. But again, that's the beginning of threat intelligence, but that's not threat intelligence itself. Those things we've just talked about, threat feeds, intelligent technology, automated defenses, and security analytics, those are tools. These are elements that can help your security program. They can contribute to your threat intelligence program. They can serve as inputs and source data. Your threat intelligence program can feed back into them to make them better, even smarter at what they do, but by themselves, they're not threat intelligence. So what is threat intelligence? Threat intelligence is using those tools to gather and analyze information about an attacker's intentions, abilities, and opportunities to inflict harm. Now, I won't normally read straight from the slide, but frankly, that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's to get a feel for who is targeting you, how they're doing it, and what you can do about it. That is what cyber threat intelligence really is. It's about amassing that kind of actionable information about what your adversaries, competitors, or other bad actors are attempting to do to your organization. Now, you notice I use the word competitors in there because a lot of this work mirrors business intelligence as far as figuring out who's targeting what they're using to do it. Similarly, I use the word adversaries because most of this work came out of the traditional intelligence gathering field, the kinds of things that nation states have been using against each other for as long as humans have been capable of conflict. So forever. Cyber threat intelligence is the analysis, as I said, of an attacker's abilities, intents, and opportunity. If an attacker has the opportunity and intent to harm you, if they can do it and they want to do it, or if they have the opportunity to do it and they want to do it, they might be able to. They still might lack the ability. If they have the ability to and the opportunity to, they could target you. Maybe you're not necessarily an adversary, but it's more of an opportunistic kind of thing. But if they have the ability to target you and they have the intent to do so, to cause you harm, they're an actual direct adversary, they're going to try. And that's something you need to know, and that's something that cyber threat intelligence can help you determine. Cyber threat intelligence itself is not just the process of doing that analysis, but it's the output from it, the analyzed information about the attackers or your adversaries' intents, abilities, and opportunities. It's what you discover about who's targeting you, who can target you, and who's most likely to actually do it. So we talked about is the information about what's going on in your environment or about who is targeting you. It's also the information about is what's going on in your environment. So we talked before about the security metrics and data that you require. You know, what the environment looks like, what your network traffic looks like, what your baselines for that look like, who's hitting your web servers, who's hitting your workstations, who's logging in, all of that, the kind of stuff that you collect as part of security operations already. All that information serves as input. You analyze that information as well as what you collect from external sources, what you know from your risk management programs, all that kind of stuff about who might be attacking you. And the output from that is the intelligence here. As a quick contrast, that's a very similar process when you're doing a risk assessment. It's identifying, you know, threats and determining what the impacted business is and the likelihood of exploitation of those risks. Risk assessments seek to identify who and what might threaten, you know, what the potential issues are. Threat intelligence is about identifying who's doing it now. It's not just about who might do it or who could do it. It's about what do you need to deal with right now? Who's targeting you right now and how are they going about doing it? What do you need to protect against right now? Let's talk a little bit about how cyber threat intelligence teams and programs can complement your traditional InfoSec programs. So they can help support, or cyber threat intelligence helps support your incident response process. So if you see on the slide there, there's the typical 6 steps or the general 6 steps in an incident response process. And cyber threat intelligence can provide support, resources, and information in all of those steps. At prevention, it provides information that a security operations center can use to improve its detection ability. You know, here's what's going on, and here's sort of the activity to watch for, the indicators of compromise is the typical term, and we'll talk more about those in a little while. It can also help identify proactive remediation steps. In other words, if you know or you discover how your attackers are going about doing things, you know which systems are likely to hit first and therefore where you need to focus most of your attention to. As far as patching, mitigations, isolation, and whatever other steps you want to take to protect those systems. The detection phase, I mentioned before that cyber threat intelligence can provide inputs about what to look for, what to monitor for, what to do alerts on, those indicators of compromise again, really help with that detection phase. It also helps identify potential attack vectors, which help tune those monitoring to the things that are going to be most indicative of a problem you need to watch for now versus just the typical noise that always seems to show up with security monitoring systems. At the respond phase, cyber threat intelligence programs can support incident response teams by helping them sort through the data that they're dealing with and identify what is related to a current attack and what's not. Help pare down that noise so they can focus on what they need to do to solve the immediate problem. It also facilitates, there's some common tools, and we'll talk about those later in the presentation, about sharing threat intelligence information, and those tools support sharing the data between not just teams in your organization, but other affected bodies, maybe you know, business partner organizations, subdivisions, other groups, but it can help them respond to an ongoing attack or maybe a campaign executed against a wide range of individuals, of organizations. During the contain phase, cyber threat intelligence can help find victims. So it identifies, you know, going back to those indicators of compromise, it can identify not just the things you need to watch for as far as incoming attacks, but maybe the information that can help you find machines and users and systems within your environment that were already compromised before you detected the attack. It can also help you identify where you need to target resources to disrupt an ongoing attack or ongoing campaigns to contain the damage and help prevent, you know, further spread. Similarly, because you now will know where to look for the systems that are compromised and the people that might have been compromised or the you know, applications or whatever else, you now know where you need to go clean things up, which machines to re-image, which servers to clean through, which things need, you know, antivirus, other removal tools or systems to you know, re-image to look at later, all that kind of stuff during the eradication phase. You can get the information you need to do that from cyber threat intelligence work. It can also help you verify that your recovery or eradication efforts are successful. You know what to look for as far as persistent infections or existing infections and compromises are concerned. You know what to watch for attempts to re-compromised hosts. So this helps give you the ability to demonstrate that not only has the issues been taken care of, but they're staying fixed. Finally, it can help you in the follow-up and learning phase of incident response, because it helps inform that the risks you have been focusing on up to this point as part of your risk management program are in fact the right ones, that your vulnerability management program has been preventing compromises, or if you need to make tweaks to those programs. It can also help you identify weaknesses within your environment and your system, because you got information, like we mentioned during the detection phase, about what likely attack vectors are. So now you have additional information about where you need to focus your proactive efforts, which brings us back to the prevent phase of incident response. So as we talked about a little bit there during IR, cyber threat intelligence can help inform what you're doing for vulnerability management and risk management. Basically, it gives you some information and tools you need to help focus what you're taking care of. If you know who the bad guys or where the bad guys are poking for chinks in your armor, then you know where it is you need to apply the duct tape, cement, steel plating, or whatever degree of strength you want to shoring up those defenses. It can help you prioritize not just remediation efforts, but monitoring, like we mentioned before. Escalation too. Identifying the systems that are targeted helps you know who you need to involve should a compromise or attack occur. Who needs to care about this? Who needs to be involved? Who needs to know? It can also help you prioritize security spending. If you know which systems need to be protected the most, you'll know where you need to spend your time and money fixing those. If threat actors are targeting your external web server, for example, then you should spend some more money and time making sure that those servers are patched, protected with a WAF, have good quality firewalls, antivirus. Then maybe you should spend right this second on, say, hard drive encryption for your laptops. Not that that's not a great thing also, but it may not be the most pressing concern for your organization, and CTI can help you identify that. It can also help you with your risk management by identifying changes in your risk profile. If you know who is actually attacking you, how they're doing it, and what they're targeting, it'll give you a good idea if your risk calculations, that the impact of the business should certain systems be compromised, and more importantly, the likelihood that those systems are going to be compromised. It'll let you know if the calculus you've employed to this point is accurate. For example, if your risk management system has identified your external web server as an absolute high-risk system because it's exposed to the internet and you think it's most likely to get targeted, but what you discover is that social engineering is how most people are actually coming after your organization, maybe your risk, the risk calculus that you employed to this point should be revisited or revised. It can also give you information on how effective your risk mitigations are. If you've put people, processes, or technology in place to reduce the risk of a system or an application or data being compromised in your environment, CTI can help give you the data that you need to demonstrate or to ensure that those mitigations have been effected and those systems, data, applications, and people have been adequately protected. It can also give you details on why we need specific controls. As security professionals, we know that there's a trade-off between usability and safety, and we're okay with that. We understand why, but it becomes an ongoing conversation, hard to describe to end users and especially management at some companies when you start implementing processes, let's say, remove administrative rights from workstations because it's just way too risky to leave them out there, right? Well, that's hard to get users to buy into sometimes, and so if you have data from CTI that you can demonstrate, say, look, this is how they're coming after us. This is what the bad guys are using to get into our environment. You have meaningful, actual, practical data that you can demonstrate to leadership and even to users that this is why we're doing it. This is why they're coming after us. It gives you a firm leg to stand on. It can also help validate or assuage concerns. We've all dealt with environments that are managed by distraction, right? It's the ooh shiny effect. A member of management or a member of a technical team goes to a conference or hears from a sales guy with some really impressive sounding tech and they get all excited about it and they want to go out and grab it right now. But is it really going to solve a problem for us? Is it going to do the things that we need it to do to protect our enterprise? CTI can tell you if it's going to be useful or something that you will want to bring into your environment. Additionally, one thing I hear a lot on the vCISO and the kind of general security practice from our organization, especially when it comes to compliance sometimes, is organizations may not understand if they're a target or who they're a target, who might be targeting them based on the information and data they handle. For example, a company that doesn't sell products on their website taking credit cards may think that they don't have to worry about someone coming after them cardholder data, but maybe it turns out that they have corporate cards issued to all 20,000 of their employees. It's a pretty big volume of stuff to do, and granted, PCI doesn't itself normally apply to corporate credit cards. The controls can still help the organization protect itself. And so cyber threat intelligence, because it tells you and helps give you the tools you need to discover who's attacking you and how, it helps you better identify if you really are a target and by who and what information they might be coming after. Maybe you're a employee or an employer that's self-insured, and you handle your employees' healthcare insurance claims. Well, does that mean you're a covered entity and HIPAA applies? Possibly, but it also means you have lots of medical data, which is a common target these days, and even though you're not a healthcare provider, you might still need to take steps, and absolutely should take steps, to adequately protect that information against bad actors. Let's move on to some tactical and strategic applications for cyber threat intelligence. A tactical application is about learning about the attack itself. So a lot of you might be familiar with what you're seeing on the screen here. This is an example of Lockheed Martin's cyber threat kill chain, or the kill chain analysis process. It's a very valuable tool for identifying aspects of an ongoing or current attack or campaign against an organization. It's not a map for incident response as a lot of folks tend to think it is. This is not necessarily exactly aligned with an attack process. It's a theoretical framework, and you can't always start at the beginning of the framework. Detection normally starts in the middle. After the attack has begun is when you start to be aware that something strange is going on. So using this as part of cyber threat intelligence can help identify, hey, someone's attacking us. Was this someone we already knew about? How are they doing it? How are they getting the stuff in our environment? Identifying that data will also help you identify, okay, let's say you've detected an active exploitation against your environment, some unknown vulnerability in, let's just say, Windows for Fun is being leveraged for someone to do bad things against your organization, and you've just discovered it. Well, now you know that there are 3 prior phases, if you're following the attack chain model, for additional information that you can look for, and so you know where to tailor your efforts. How did they deliver it to us in the first place? How did they get it here? What kind of tool are they using? What did they weaponize? Is it coming in via email? Is it coming in via a Word document? Is it coming in via flash drives they sprinkled around the parking lot outside? How did they find that we were a target in the first place? So the point here is that where you using the kill chain to analyze an attack can give you information on where to focus your ongoing efforts to further enrich the information you have and produce better security response and better intelligence. It can also be used as a framework to help communicate where you are in your response and what other information and processes you may need to prevent, stop, or contain the attack. What we're looking at here, some other folks may also be familiar with. This is the Diamond model that was created by the Center for Cyber Threat Intelligence and Threat Research. Some really great guys in the realm of cybersecurity and research. They put this together about, I want to say 2013, I think is when it came out. This helps you learn about the attacker and the folks that are attacking you. It's a model that explores not necessarily a single ongoing attack, but the relationships between the adversary, who they're targeting, how they're targeting you, and what they're doing to get those details into, or get themselves into your environment. It can work a lot to help you inform the kill chain, keep track of, are we looking at one attack or multiple attacks, or one attacker or multiple attackers. It can also help generate some of those indicators of compromise we were talking before, which we'll get to on the very next slide here. So what you're looking at on the left here is something known as the pyramid of pain. David Bianco came up with this a few years ago as a way of explaining sort of the value and usefulness of specific indicators of compromise, and it's a really incredibly useful tool for determining how useful an indicator of compromise is going to be and how long it's going to live. Indicators of compromise have limited shelf life. They're only valuable while they apply to the tools, the tactics, techniques, and procedures, and other elements that an attacker is using against you now. Once the attacker switches to a different tool set, a different exploit kit, a different attack vector, your existing IOCs won't apply anymore. You know, if you know that they're coming at you from a specific IP address, for example, and they go and grab a different hosting provider or compromise a machine somewhere else and come at you from there, well, the IP, you know, that's not going to be any good anymore. So the concept of the pyramid of pain really is, as you go up the pyramid, the attacker's ability to change that element of their attack is much, much harder for them. At the very top of the pyramid, you have tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are the things that apply to the human elements of your attackers. Why they do the things they do, what their habits are, what they're comfortable with, what languages they program in, what tools they use. Well, tools is the second one, but what maybe tool kits they use or exploit kits they use. The things that are difficult for them to break because they have to do new research, they have to learn whole new ways of attacking you. If you can get IOCs related to those, it's very, very hard for an attacker to change those things, and it's more likely you'll be able to find them on an ongoing basis within your environment. At the bottom of the pyramid are hashes. We all know that that's how traditional antivirus and everything works, or even some of the network-based security software has specific signatures. They look for file hashes or you know, other basic indicators of you know, that this is malware, this is a bad thing. Well, as we all know, changing those is trivial. I can compile a piece of malware, generate a hash for it. I can take the same piece of malware and recompile it, changing something as simple as a date or time in the metadata for the file itself, or maybe the case on a string I'm using to do something within it, which is a little bit higher up on the pane, but the idea there, or on the pyramid, but the idea there really is that it's trivial to change those things to circumvent those processes, and that's what tools like Veil are all about on the exploit side. Do make minor changes that don't affect the execution of a program to modify its hash so that it can't be found anymore, and the IOCs related to it are no longer effective. The process for leveraging IOCs is once you find them in your environment, now it's, or detect them coming at you, or they detect an active attack, you need to go hunt through the rest of your environment. Where did they get us? Where did they compromise us? As you discover more machines that are compromised, you refine the IOCs you have based on the other elements you found on those machines. Maybe one IOC led to another. You know, you find an IP address tied to a domain name, or you find a specific hash that was of a piece of malware that was dropped by another piece of malware that you didn't detect yet. So hey, now you have two hashes to look for, or maybe one of them belongs to a specific exploit kit, and you just discovered a TTP that your attacker is using against you, or a specific one that they like to leverage. Refining that data improves your IOCs and gives you more of them that you can use to continue the hunt. And it begins that process for as long as you keep seeing the IOCs in your environment. As soon as you stop seeing anymore, it likely doesn't mean that you're no longer under attack. It means that your attackers have switched their tools or switched their attack. So keep that in mind. Not finding things doesn't necessarily mean you're not under attack. It just means you're not necessarily looking in the right place. Let's talk about some strategic applications for cyber threat intelligence. The first one and most important one is probably process improvement. Threat intelligence, because it analyzes the data produced and works with the teams at a lot of the other levels within a security program, helps to identify things that those teams didn't know about, and even helps facilitate communication between those teams, making your security apparatus as a whole, or your security program as a whole, both more efficient and more effective. Share and share alike. So a lot of organizations these days are hesitant to share information, and that's understandably so. You need to be careful with who you share with, what they're going to use it for, especially if they're competitors in the same industry. However, sharing doesn't just mean who else you're talking to out there in the world. It talks about how your teams internally. Because IOCs are a relatively well understood concept between groups, especially involved in security, they provide a standard way of sharing information about potential risks, attackers, threats, and other, well, and specifically the tools, techniques, and processes, like we mentioned before, that they're using to attack you. Sharing it internally helps your groups work better together, and helps them be on the same page about what they're looking for, what they're trying to protect the organization against, which gets back to the process improvement we just talked about. By the same token, sharing that information externally helps the entire industry your business exists in, and potentially, even larger groups. it fosters goodwill. If you're a company that says, hey, we discovered this attack and we're willing to come out there and let everybody else know so that our customers in general are taken care of, it generates goodwill among would-be partners and potential competitors, but more importantly, a lot of times your customers. It also encourages reciprocity, the idea that if you're willing to share information, maybe your competitors or partners in the industry will share with you next time when they discover something that could impact you that you didn't know. This is also, those two ideas are also relatively common concepts on the business intelligence side of the world, where you're talking about competitive data, especially where two organizations want to enter the same market but for different reasons or in different industries or fields. Similar kind of processes and concerns exist there. There are lots of organizations that can help with the sharing of this data. There's InfraGard, which is an FBI public-private partnership designed for sharing information and improving the protections for 16 critical infrastructures within the United States. There are similar groups outside the United States. There's the various information sharing analysis centers and analysis organizations created as a result of executive order. 13691 was the official one signed by, I believe that was President Obama, to help foster cooperation between industry leaders and, more importantly, between the government and industry leaders. It was a directive specifically to the Department of Homeland Security to create these groups to foster the sharing of that information. There's also cyber threat exchanges, and these are more sometimes anonymous, but organizations that you can exchange IOCs with directly to try to get some more and enrich the data that you've got. One caveat to all of those is to trust your own data first. You gathered it yourself, you know where it came from, you understand the context, and more importantly, you understand how accurate it might be. So when you get data from other folks, that's awesome, but take it with a grain of salt. And then, of course, like we mentioned before, be careful of what you choose to share and who you choose to share it with. Just like you would with business intelligence, not all of your competitors, even if they're not in your market space now, are always not going to be in your market space. So you need to be a little guarded with the information you share, but all of those same kind of concerns apply here. Finally, let's talk about decision support. So I mentioned a few times that cyber threat intelligence can provide information you need to help prioritize and ultimately justify certain actions or purchases or expenditures within your security program. It can also help identify your selection of security and control frameworks that you choose to have your organization comply with. I mentioned PCI earlier related to protecting credit card data. Well, CTI can give you the information you need. Is credit card data, cardholder data, something actively sought for in your organization or that attackers are coming out to get? Well, that can help you if you need to adopt PCI or other things. Similar with other control frameworks or security frameworks like NIST 853 control framework, which is a great standard that a lot of people use, but you may not have to abide by it if you're not doing business with the federal government or maybe you're not subject to FISMA, that kind of stuff, for example. It can also help you identify, I mentioned before about all that smart tech that people like to sell these days. Well, if you have information about who's attacking you and how they're attacking you, that gives you a better idea to know if the security projects that are on your list for this year are ones you need to focus on now or can put off for a year or two. It can let you know if the vendors and solutions you're looking at will improve your security overall. If you've got somebody who wants to sell you some like the best ever anti-spam system you've ever seen, it catches all spam and there's no false positives and only good stuff gets through. And while I'm talking about it, if you actually have that, please let me know what it is because I've yet to see it anywhere. That said, if that seems great, but your cyber threat intelligence program is telling you that people are coming after your organization because they want the data that's stored in the databases connected to your web server, and they're actively poking at your web servers looking for exploits, but you don't see a lot of spam or malicious email traffic coming in right now. They haven't got to the point of using, say, phishing attacks. Maybe that awesome spam system can be put off for a little while, at least from a security perspective. It still may be useful from a user satisfaction perspective, of course, because making your users and your organization happy will help them be more amenable to giving you money you need for other things down the road, but it's not necessarily a security concern at that point. It'll also help you know if you're resourcing your teams appropriately. If your CTI program detects coordinated, ongoing, complex, and high volume attacks against your organization or against an asset for your organization, but your incident response team is, one guy who works every other Thursday, maybe you need some more resourcing on incident response to ensure that those attacks won't be successful, or at least will be quickly contained and eradicated if they are successful. Finally, it can give you some idea about what key performance indicators for your security program that you need to be keeping an eye on based on how and what attacks you're defending against. Everybody wants metrics they can track the effectiveness of their security program with. How do you know that you're really protecting your organization from the bad guys out there that are attacking you? Well, through CTI, you can gain information about who really is attacking you and what they're doing, which will tell you what metrics you need to track. If they're constantly hitting your web servers, then you want to be looking at what the detection rates on your WAFs are, or on your firewalls, or the antivirus systems on the web servers, which can give you information about the WAFs themselves. If your antivirus is having to stop a lot because the WAFs aren't, maybe your WAFs aren't doing a good enough job, for example. So CTI can give you information that will help feed those programs and make sure that you're really looking at the right metrics for demonstrating the effectiveness of your security program to your stakeholders, but also on ways and areas you might need to improve that program. All right, we've talked a lot about what you can do with cyber threat intelligence, and a little bit on some ways that you can use it. So let's talk about some issues that a lot of teams run into when they're trying to get into cyber threat intelligence. And the first problem is jumping into it too soon. Cyber threat intelligence depends on mature information security program. In order for it to be effective, you need to know what you have to protect, so you need to have a good inventory of all of your systems. And I know everybody groans when we talk about security, starting a security program or doing a framework, that you have to inventory your environment. But it's important because you can only protect what you know about. So you have to have good asset management and software management. You've got to know what's out there. You also have to have good processes for vulnerability management and patching. You may detect lots of attacks against web servers trying to exploit a specific known vulnerability. Well, if you can't patch the web application to plug that hole, then you're going to get compromised over and over, and all your incident responders and cyber threat intelligence and everything is going to tell you is that, yes, we know we keep getting broken into because we haven't taken care of that problem. Similarly, you need to have quality access controls. I mentioned before about organizations that have engaged in programs to remove administrative rights from end users on their workstations. Well, attackers love to take advantage of the fact that people have more rights than they need to. And if it's not something you have effectively managed at this point, you can patch all the systems you want to, you can build all the fences around your systems that you want to, but people are always the weakest link, and someone's excessive access is going to get leverage to compromise you. You also have to have the basic security devices in place. Cyber threat intelligence is not going to protect your network if you don't have a firewall. It's about enriching those programs, helping you do a better job of those programs, but you still have to do all those basic stuff. You need firewalls, you need antivirus, you need all of the other usual typical security tech. Forgetting to wash your hands. So I mentioned before that I spent a good portion of my IT and security career in healthcare, and one of the things that comes up in healthcare that's very important, obviously, is infection control. How do we make sure that patients who come to us to get help don't leave worse than they got here, or with something they didn't come here with in the first place? One of the most, in fact, effective way of preventing that is to wash your hands regularly, frequently, and correctly. And so healthcare organizations spend a lot of time talking about that. Well, similar to healthcare, there's things like that you can do with system care or maybe security care. The top of that list is patching. Every unpatched vulnerability is a potential entry point into your environment. Every organization that I have ever assessed or worked with always has a portion of their enterprise that they can't or have difficulties patching, and those are almost always where we find, if not actual compromises, evidence of attempts, and a lot of times the issues that they lead to, or the compromises that unpatched systems cause, aren't even related to bad actors. They're just basic stability and availability kind of stuff. So patch your stuff, patch it regularly, and follow up after you deploy patches to make sure that they really did hit every system. If you've got 10,000 machines and your patches get out to all but 1% of them, you've still got 100 machines that haven't been patched, if I did my math correctly. So I can't stress that enough. I find it all the time, and it's probably the most common recommendation that in fact, I could do a poll internally. I have yet to generate either a risk assessment or a enterprise security controls assessment or a security program assessment or any assessment really where it hasn't been a recommendation to improve a patching and vulnerability management program. Jumping to conclusions. Because CTI is about analyzing information about who's attacking you and for what reasons, it's really easy for organizations to get stuck assuming who the bad guys already are. But you may not catch the actual people attacking you if you assume that you already know who it is. Like the tagline for the movie, they're the usual suspects, which, by the way, I try to find a way to put this into every presentation or every webinar that I get. Look for it. I might try to hide it sometime, but the truth is always in the last place you look. If you assume that your brother Bob is the only person who doesn't like your business and he's going to be coming after you, you're going to spend a lot of your time and effort trying to detect your brother Bob breaking into your organization, and you completely miss it when the attack actually came from somewhere else because you weren't expecting and didn't think to look for it. Similarly, as you develop your theories of who's attacking you and for what reason, remember basic scientific method and the kind of stuff you learned in your high school science classes. You can't prove a theory. There's a reason we say gravity is still just a theory. We can't prove it. However, you can develop what they call the null hypothesis. In other words, can you do anything that will disprove the theory? You know, we still assume the theory of gravity is true because we have yet to find a way to throw something in the air and have it not return to the Earth eventually. If we could, then we could disprove it and think that maybe we need to do something else about it. And the same thing applies as you're developing theories on who's attacking your organization and how they're going about attacking your organization. If you think you're on the right track and you think you know who it is, work with that as the working theory. It's the what we think is going on right now. But if you can disprove that it's that individual, then maybe it's somebody else. The best example I can think of, a really kind of obvious way to look at this, goes back to the old McDonald's commercials in the 80s, where they had the hamburger. The original one was always trying to steal the hamburgers from the kids and from Ronald and everything, right? But I remember one specific commercial where the hamburger was just sitting there, propped up against the wall, and Grimace was doing it because he was hungry, the big purple guy in the background, right? So he kept doing it, and everybody kept blaming the hamburger, and the poor guy, it wasn't his fault. I mean, he's usually the bad guy, he's usually the one you would think to do it, but it was actually Grimace. And the same thing applies on all this kind of stuff. Don't assume you know who's doing it until you're sure, and even if you're sure, don't discount the possibility that might not be, because if you find that piece of evidence indicating it couldn't be that individual, then you know you need to look somewhere else. All right, so we've got some additional thoughts on cyber threat intelligence. These are just some additional pieces of information and sort of parting stuff that you can further things to consider as you implement cyber threat intelligence or maybe want some more information about it. The first had to do with some tools that you can use to do cyber threat intelligence. These are open source stuff used by a lot of practitioners, whether they're doing threat intelligence or other things. They can provide information on your attackers, their tactics, techniques, and processes, as well as validating IOCs that you got to or that you have. There's some caveats associated with that we don't really have time to get into today, related to submitting hashes to VirusTotal is probably the most obvious one. VirusTotal publishes all the hashes that have been searched for. So if you have an IOC and you have a hash for a piece of malware and you want to know where else it's been seen or who else has seen it, you go query VirusTotal for it. However, if you don't think anybody else has it yet and you put it out there, it's a real good flag to the bad guys that you just found their stuff too. You can use these tools to help identify interesting IOCs, or there's some techniques you can do to identify interesting indicators of compromise or signatures related to the specific tool sets and techniques and processes that the bad guys might be using. Unique passwords or names of mutexes or strings embedded within malware. Attackers like to, they trade inside jokes a lot. They like to reuse certain specific pieces of data, tying back to those human aspects, those habits that they have, or maybe they're just really fed up with their last organization. They left company A, and so they started embedding all the malware they start using to attack company A with the string "company A sucks." Well, you see changing hashes because you see different pieces of malware coming out, but they all contain that string. They might have all come from the same person, right, or the same attacker maybe, or they might have embedded into a tool or something. But it helps you get more quality out of the IOCs that you have. Sometimes they use algorithms. They try to implement their own forms of encryption or obfuscation or something on their own. They do a poor job of it. Well, if they do, or they do a poor job of it, that can provide you a signature. You can look at other pieces of malware to see if it came from the same place. You know, especially this is useful with some of the toolkits that are for purchase out there on the internet, where some guy, or on the dark web maybe, where some guy wrote an exploit kit to help script kiddies or other bad guys take over websites, and they wanted to encrypt their command and control processes used with their toolkit, so they implemented their own version of, say, RC4 or AES, but they did it wrong. It can provide an obvious signature within the logic of the programs that, hey, this came from the same place, the same toolkit, and now we can find it and kill it in our environment. Storing and sharing intelligence. We talked about that a few times. There's some tools specifically used for doing that. YARA rules has been becoming more and more common in the security field in the last few years. So are XML or plain text, just basic things you can use to help exchange that information. The traffic light protocol is a construct for how you share information and sort of classify it, who you share it with and who they're allowed to share it with when they get it from you. Cybox, Stix, and Taxi were created by MITRE as to provide common programming interfaces for both sharing IOCs, storing them, and giving them to other individuals who might care about them. Again, those are the information share organizations we mentioned too. You can meet with InfraGard with other folks from the same industry vertical that you live in, or maybe hear about what's hitting other industries to see if those are likely to come after you next. Maybe exchange data that you get with the ISACs and ISAOs, or again, there's those cyber threat exchanges that you can leverage. Countering threats. So CTI, we talked about how the formal process can keep you from jumping to conclusions and avoiding biases. They can also help you avoid overreacting. Just because it's an active attack doesn't necessarily mean that your organization is being directly targeted. You know, ransomware is probably the prime example of this, where folks will, you know, they get a ransomware infection, somebody clicked on a link in an email they weren't supposed to, and so now they think, oh, the ransomware guys are out to get us. Well, it might have just been a drive-by infection. CTI can help you identify, well, is it a one-time occurrence? Excuse me, is it a common occurrence? Have we seen it before? It can also help you keep your analysis and your security operations grounded in the real data based on what's going on, so you can avoid just doing things to placate individuals based on their, you know, fears or concerns. There's a toolkit used in classical intelligence called the analysis of competing hypotheses, and the idea here really is to help avoid, again, getting those blinders on and assuming you know what's going on and who's coming after you. And basically what it means is listing out all other possibilities that fit the evidence you have, regardless of how completely out there they are. I mean, you could include things in here like it's aliens invading our environment because they want to take over humanity. Well, if that theory fits all the data that you have, then the one theory you thought, and your working theory based on the data you have, may actually may not have enough data to exclude those other kind of out there stuff. So ACH can help you identify, you know, maybe your theory or you don't have enough evidence to really support the one theory you have, and you need to see if there's other ones out there. It can also help you in your threat modeling activities related to risk management and vulnerability management by having you focus those efforts on who's coming after you right now and how they're coming after you, so that you can better prepare your folks for the threats you actually face as opposed to just the threats you might face. Well, we've come to the end of our webinar and our presentation. We've got about 6 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat or send us an email. We have one question right now. It looks like someone wants to know if there's a tool to trace back DNS query to the endpoint that originated it. Unfortunately, no, not really. And the main reason for that, at least from my experience, has to do with the fact that DNS is so widely distributed that you don't necessarily know where the information came from, and it wasn't designed to support that kind of traceability. It was really designed to get the information out there and for anybody to hold it. There's also the idea that the DNS servers cache information, whether they're authoritative or not, and may not necessarily be giving you the right or most up-to-date information. Now, there are some tools you can do that kind of stuff within your own environment. Of course, most of those are related to, you know, evaluating your own network traffic and doing intercepting that kind of stuff, to keep an eye on it there. But it's hard to tell where somebody's coming from the outside with that. That said, there are lots of dynamic DNS tools that are used out there by malware folks. That was on one of the prior slides as a potential something to look for, one of those additional thought slides. And you can use those to see maybe what other domains might be subject, or might give you the ability to know what domains are likely to be suspect, but you won't necessarily know where the queries came from if they originate from outside your own environment. All right, so it looks like we don't have any other questions yet, or they're coming in via email, and I can always respond to people after the fact. So I want to thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, we have from inside out. Oh, okay, so this additional question about the DNS thing. If somebody within your organization is making DNS queries out there and you want to know if you can trace back where they came from, the easiest way to do that is the same way you look for any other malicious or unusual network traffic in your environment. You do packet captures, and you start tracking data back that way. If you use internal DNS caching servers, a lot of times they can be configured to log the client query, so you know the originating client where it came from. This is true for like Windows DNS servers, and bin servers both can also track referral requests from where they came from. And the data may not be accurate in that it may not pinpoint the exact client, but maybe if the request is related from somewhere else, then you can use it to figure out, it give you a path on where you need to go to find the information. All right, so thank you all for your time. If you want to talk about any of these topics in any more detail or any further, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email, give us a call. We'll have the slides from the presentation up on our website pretty soon, probably within the week, I would suspect, as well as the video posted to YouTube out there. Check out our blog too. There's some really, really kind of interesting, both applications, not just cyber threat intelligence, but some really kind of fun technical work that our Ring Zero guys have been doing lately about examples of how they're breaking into systems and what you can do about it, especially in some fringe cases, as well as some interesting discussions about business and how to better protect your environment. All right, thank you all for your time.